Alright, good morning everybody. We're going to talk about some computer security. Right? Essentially, we're going to be taking a look at, of course, mostly security with respect to as it relates to information systems. We'll take a look at, of course, what could go wrong with, with computer systems, what could cause something to go wrong, and what aspects of the computer systems we have to protect. Right? Question: how much do you all think about security in terms of your own stuff, computer-wise? You all ever had any kind of security breach? Computer related.
Virus.
Alright, the virus is anybody else? Anything? Same thing? You lost data or not really you able to recover? You able to recover?
No, I don't know.
Okay, good. You were prepared? Alright. So we want to take a look, of course, we know that computer systems, they have the hardware, software, all those kind of things. We're going to start by taking a look first at what could go wrong from a security point of view. An aspect of considering security that many people don't think about is nature. When we think about security, a lot of the times, we think about security from the perspective of essentially somebody hacking into a system, or maybe even somebody else's error, etc. like that. But really and truly, in terms of computer security, nature is a big factor that we need to take a look at, right? And like in strike, could cause computer systems to go down. Could cause a surge in power, like moving computers, data, or disrupting computers' data, etc. Right? You can have a fire, a flood, same thing, you can physically destroy a computer. Right? Heat waves, cold waves, you know that computers can't really handle computers can't really handle heat so much, right? And also it's extreme cold. Earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions. What methods can we put in place to protect ourselves from all of this? And between this week and next week, we're going to take a look at that. And even in terms of somebody getting sick, right? Disease of key employees. You trust, essentially certain aspects of the system to one person, and then that one person gets sick to the sick point that they can't share the information that they have. What is it? What do we do with that? Okay? Something else that could go wrong, right, is that, of course, evil actions by people. We want to understand how somebody could break into a system. And the term used to describe these type of people is not hackers, but crackers. Alright? A hacker is just somebody who tinkers with a system. They're not necessarily malicious. Which is where till like hacks come from. You want to know what like hacks are, right? All those little tips that people give to say, make your life a little better, do some easier for yourself. Right? Hacking is just changing the way that somebody utilizes a system. But cracking is where we get into the system, around the security put up by the system. We have social engineering, right? And the most popular form of that is phishing. You know what is phishing? You know what phishing is?
Yeah.
Right? Basically, yeah. It's called
Grace of this website and information.
steal that information. Yeah, it's called phishing because it's really phishing for information. Right? You have of course identity theft, vandalism, right? An employee leaves the company, and what happens? Right? You say, well, if I work here no more fire for this company, you break something. Right? So sabotage, cyber attacks, and the typical analysis attacks. Right? Terrorism and war, huh? Yeah. Then we also have from the perspective of malicious software, right? We have viruses, we have worms. I don't go into this so much because we're going to come back and we're going to do a little exercise on this. Right? Viruses, worms, Trojan horses. You know what a Trojan horse is? Something that pretends to be a gift, but it really is malicious. You know the story of Troy? Right? Yes? Right. So it's the same concept from a computer perspective. Somebody sends you a file and you think it's a good file, but it's not a good file. Right? It actually is a file that is allowing them to get into your system. We have rootkits, right, which give, of course, people access, supervisory access to your system. Right? Keyloggers stealing everything that you type on a computer. Right? Network sniffers, backdoors, dialers, spyware, ransomware. Huh? Takes a look at all the packets that are moving across the network and steals data like that. Right? Then we also have infrastructure or services problems. Right? We have, of course, failure of software. That happens. You can't write a 100% perfect program. Right? We have failure of hardware. Again, too, everything has a shelf life. Electricity. Right? You could lose power, and of course, by extension, now you could lose your data, or you could have a power surge and it could damage your hardware of the computer. Right? You have infrastructure, network, your cable cut, right? Or saturation where your network can handle any more data that is being passed along it. We have where air conditioning could fail and the computer system overheat. Right? Something like water pipes leaking or a system upgrade. Some of us who use Windows often, we know how dangerous a system upgrade could be for your system. Because you might actually upgrade your system and it might have a little problem in the upgrade that wasn't put by the developers and it could put your system at risk. Or alternatively, you could not upgrade and your system could be at risk and through that upgrade you don't protect yourself. So you have to be in the know with respect to security, right? Whether or not you are upgrading your system or not upgrading your system is based upon the knowledge that you have about that specific upgrade, right? And then we have of course service providers. They could go down, cloud service providers that you have, your online meter storage service to go down, and that could cause problems to your business. And we also have, of course, things like overload of the CPU, memory, all of that. And continue with understanding what could go wrong. We have human errors, right? We have where people can lose the laptop, the smartphone, the USB stick. No encryption. You can leak your password or crack, right? Or your computer console is left unlocked. And somebody just walks in. I remember reading a story, as I said, back when the internet went down because I think a guy said, you know, he needed to get onto the internet and he just kind of just walked into a business school, basically just from the business IT department and they gave him the computer to use. Right? Nowadays things are a little more strict than that. But at the end of the day, human error accounts for a large part of computer security problems. Right? Misunderstanding computer interface or other mistakes, deleting data or corrupting data. You all heard about the business owner the other day who deleted his entire business because he made a computer error with a command? No? I can't remember what it was. He was using a Linux machine and he was messing around with it. And Linux, of course, is a very powerful operating system. Still operating system. It's so powerful it can actually delete itself. Right? Through a command rms-rf or something so. Right? And so he was rm-rf. RM is to remove. Right? But if you don't specify what you're removing, it'll assume that you want to remove everything on the computer. So I think he was trying to delete a folder, and he had 3 years worth of his business on this computer. And what this does, R stands for recurrence, so that means you just go to the computer and remove everything. And F stands for forceful, which means it's not asking to delete anything. So he wiped away his whole business, his whole, client information, current projects he was working on, and he didn't have a backup nothing. Right? And of course he was trying to get help on the internet because he was trying to see if anybody could recover his data from him. I don't think that even his most of his data recovered, no. So human error could be very, very costly. Right? So with that said, we have a little point here that says, in this corner we have firewalls, encryption, antivirus software, right? Everything to protect your systems. And in this corner we have Dave. And Dave looks like kind of person who, no matter how much security you put in place, Dave is going to mess up your system. That's how we do it? Oh, I thought it was my system. Right? So we know some days. You want to know something? I know some days. I work in a staff group full of people and as an IT person, you always meet up with some days. Alright? So you're like, I didn't know that you couldn't do that, or you shouldn't do that, whatever. Right? Like I have, the most common one is I see like people get very attached to the memory sticks. To the point where when the memory sticks start hanging off from the part that is sticking to the computer. Right? You ever see that when the case fall off and it's still using the memory stick? Yes, but it's not safe because at some point it's going to mash up. Yeah. How was that? Yes, you should buy a new one. Because at the end of the day, at some point you're going to plug it in and the computer is going to tell you, device not recognized. And I've dealt with about 4 that over the past 2 years. It's like, fathers, come see this. Right? And I go the other way. So, I know enough people lose all of the data through that. So, we have some tools for confidentiality. Confidentiality deals with of course, keeping the information secure, right? Keeping it for only that information is meant to be for. And we can use authorization, right? Have access policies, implement some sort of access control. So, in most businesses, depending on your account, or a lot of businesses, depending on your account, you can only access like a certain part of the whole system, right? You don't want somebody from accounts getting into HR business. But you don't want somebody from purchasing getting into accounts business. Right? You might want to keep those things separate. We have also authentication, which deals with ensuring that you can prove who you are. It's for identification. Right? It's kind of like the reason why we wear badges inside, okay? We don't want anybody just walking in off the street, sitting down inside here and using machines, going here, nobody coming inside here and not really doing nothing. So, right? So, essentially, you want the same thing for your system. You want to be able to authenticate the users. And this is why on a system, we have user IDs and we have passwords. Right? We have encryption, which allows us to make data unreadable once it is in transit, but once it reaches its destination, it's then reconverted back into meaningful data. Right? And then we have auditing and logging. A VPN? Well, the true purpose of a VPN is for security actually. Yes. Right? What a VPN is, as it says, visual private network, what it does is that it allows a secure, stable connection over our public infrastructure. So, if it is that we're running a business and I'm not physically where the business is, but I have sensitive data that is supposed to pass, this is how we get the virtual private part. It kind of mimics that, I'm actually part of the network, but really I'm using public infrastructure. Right? Well, most people use VPNs to get American Netflix. For what? Oh, to get into the store. Yeah. Right? But that's another benefit of VPNs, because what VPNs allow you to do is it allows you to mask your location as well. Right? So that you can pretend to be in one location when you're really in another location. Right? And as I said, auditing and logging, once we log everything, if there is a disaster, once we have a log, we can see who exactly caused that disaster. It allows us to basically have a paper trail as to what happened and who did it. Right? We also have, so Mark said confidentiality is a big part of security. Right? Another big part of security is integrity. And essentially, these big parts of security, I remember the first class that we had, where we talked about the characteristics of information. A lot of the characteristics of information relates to security. Right? The integrity of our data, we want to keep our data correct as it is. Right? So we have backups of data. What is a backup? A backup is in case the data that we currently use gets corrupted, then we can simply go back to the set of data that we know is correct. Right? We also have checksums. You all ever heard of checksums? No? Right. What a checksum is a checksum is essentially a pool. Right? And typically what the most popular checksum that you would see for most people's use is like what they call an MD5 checksum. What a checksum is that if it is that I have a piece of software Your torrent, any one? Yes. Okay. Alright, you don't want to implicate yourself. Alright? Okay. Alright. So when I download a file via torrent, so right, yes. Yes, it's easy downloads. But when you download a file off the internet, right? Let's say for instance, let's talk about something legal. A Linux distribution. Typically, when you download a Linux distribution off the internet, what they give you as well is an MD checksum file. And it's just a file that contains long, list of characters in a particular sequence. For me to be able to check that that file that I downloaded is the file that was on the server, what I could do is I could take that file and I could run it through a checksum. And what will happen is that it would take a look at the data inside of that file and it will generate a code based upon the data inside of that file. When I have that code after I do the checksum on it, I can check against the checksum that I downloaded from the site, and if they match, then I know that the data that I downloaded is the same. If I get a different checksum value, then it means that the data is corrupted. Make sense? So you can think of it like that, right? Regardless of how much times I run a file, once I use the same checksum method, and that is, like MD5 checksum generation or something, so I should get the same value all of the time. So if it is that I run my checksum on my data at some point and I get a different checksum value from the checksum that I knew that I had when the data had its integrity or when the data was correct, then problems. And then the last one, I'm sure everybody here knows this one, antivirus software. Yes? Right. So, seeing that we all know antivirus, what is antivirus software? It's antivirus. So it protects the computer against viruses. Well, with that being said, what's a virus? Yeah, basically that. Something that threatens the security of your machine. Alright? So, you have like in the little comic here, you have where it says we back up our data sticky notes because sticky notes never crash. You don't ever meet anybody like that, regardless of what they have on the computer, they want a copy of it on paper. Yeah. Alright? So that you can say, at some point this computer will fail me. I can just look in the book and get what I want. Alright? Typically, if your computer system is good enough, you wouldn't have to back up using a manual method. Alright, yeah. So I'm going to put the data, elsewhere. So we have then now availability of data. And what are some of the tools that we have for availability of data, right? We have, of course, disaster recovery planning, or as we call it for this course, as we will see in our exams when they ask us, a business continuity plan. So, what your business continuity plan is that it's a plan that outlines the steps that must be taken in order to. It's a plan that outlines the steps that must be taken in order to recover from some disaster that your computer system or information system faces. Right? who has certain responsibilities in terms of recovering the system. It should, of course, tell us where to find the backup data, right? And if possible, even something like giving us instructions on exactly how to recover the data. We have some physical protection. Sorry, I recovered from the cold. And this is 18. Not God, they don't get very hot inside of here. Alright, so physical protection, we have anti-theft devices. And a lot of people, when it comes to computer security, tend to forget that one of the best security methods that you can implement for a computer system is a simple lock on the door. Right? It's the truth. Right? Of course, you all never hear the term rocks keep honest people honest. Yes? No? Right? It's the truth. If you really want to get to that data, you take a walk on the door, you're going to stop. If there's something that you want in the room and you go ahead and you're going to do on this lock. What's the next step? Break it. Oh my gosh. But it's the truth. You will find a way inside. But for those people who might not be motivated enough to do that, it's the first line of defense. Right? And then we have other physical protection methods that we will take a look at in a little while. Things like biometrics, right? Voice recognition, right? Security cameras, security guards, stuff like that. And as we spoke about before, ways of protecting your hardware by having like a UPS or an uninterruptible power supply. So we have the UPS and we have surge protectors. And what is the difference, anybody knows, between a UPS and a surge protector?
The UPS protects the computer like a current circuit board. UPS will allow you to see if you can shut it off safely.
Yeah.
Surge protector protects against surge fluctuations. If the current goes too high.
Yeah. So that's basically the difference. Your UPS, which stands for uninterruptible power supply, in the event of a lack of power, sudden lack of power, the computer needs electricity to operate. It will automatically switch to the battery and it should give you enough time to safely shut down the computer system. Whereas, as you said, your surge protector protects against, like when you lose current and then when you text send it back, it's kind of, you literally hear in the house and before everything come back on. Because the power kind of comes with a surge, right? And then the fridge mash up or something like that because of that. That is what happens. If these devices essentially have, they're supposed to operate within a certain range of power, right? When your power goes above that, you could damage the computer system. Alternatively, if the power is not enough, right? Or you have some fluctuation. So a surge, let's take if this is power, this is essentially what the UPS will allow you to do. It will allow you to automatically switch the battery to continue. This line is power again. What a UPS will allow you to do, so another UPS surge protector will allow you to do, is it will note the change in power and it will protect you against it. So you don't get this spike and the computer system is protected. Right? And we have the last one called a line conditioner. Sometimes we see our lights in our house just flicker. When you get like a electricity don't go, but like it get weak. You all have experienced that? Right. And sometimes it gets weaker and it gets bright and it gets weak and it gets bright. And that's when the line, essentially, there's an unstable electrical signal going on the line. What your line conditioner does is it looks for fluctuations in the electrical signal and it regulates it. Right? Your line conditioner voltage regulator. So we have three different power-wise physical approaches to protecting your computer system. We have your UPS, we have your surge protector, and we have your line conditioner. And again, moving forward, actually, we have where we can have redundancy of information, which is where that information exists in more than one place, so that we can, if one goes down, we can use the other, or we can have redundancy in terms of a technique called RAID. And RAID stands for redundant array of independent disks. And what RAID does, redundant array of independent disks. And what RAID does is that RAID allows for the same data to be stored over and over within a computer system. So that, and there are different strategies to RAID that you learn when you go through there to computer or whatever. But we're just taking a look at the overview level. What happens in your RAID setup is that it allows us to do two things. If one location is destroyed, let's say we have multiple hard drives, it'll get the data from the mirroring location. Right? Also, if it is that we have part of data lost in RAID, it allows us to rebuild data based upon, of course, the copies that we have. So, RAID essentially allows us to write data, the same data, to multiple disks. When we change that data, it's going to get changed on multiple disks. RAID is not a backup. Right? Don't confuse it with a backup. A backup is where we take a snapshot of what we have and we put it aside. So that if we lose what we have, we can just take that snapshot and put it back. Right? RAID is more for like, active, essentially loss of data. But there is no reinstallation of it. It's just the data that I have on this one cannot be read. Don't worry, I have that exact same data on this too. Right? So it's a strategy by just having multiple disks with the same information. Then we have intrusion detection systems. Of course, both like alarms or systems that will look and see if we have unauthorized connections to our computer system. We have antivirus software, which we spoke about just now, and we have firewalls, which people people love to say when I ask, what is a firewall? People say it's a I'm looking for water firewalls. See me? Alright? But it is what it is. Let me ask you a question. When you go through a wall of fire? No. Why? You're going to get this. So a firewall essentially protects. Right? A firewall essentially protects the user's data by blocking unwanted access to your computer system. We've already established that your computer communicates through connection ports, right? Communication ports. And without a firewall, somebody might have access to your computer by connecting to a port that is not currently being used. And then you can, view the data in the computer, etc. What a firewall does essentially is monitor those ports to ensure that anybody connecting to the computer has to prove that they are a legitimate connection. So, you all have seen Windows firewall errors come up on the computers, right? Not so? Ever notice that? Right, sometimes you go to a site and a little prompt come up saying Windows firewall doesn't trust this connection. Do you still want to connect? Because you want to go to the site, you just click yes. Right? And you watch a movie on the site, and then 3 days later, you realize that a whole bunch of stuff going strange with your computer. So it's your computer. You're like, well, I didn't do anything wrong. I just, watch a movie on moviewatcher.com, and there's that. And you kind of tell yourself, you didn't do anything wrong, but you really compromised yourself. Okay, so we have some tools for confidentiality. I'm going to go into a little more detail on passwords here. So, what is a password? What's a password?
Will you set
Essentially just that. A word or a string of characters that protects your data. Right? That somebody must enter before they can access a particular system. You might not believe how often you have to tell this to people, but you must never share your password. Right? I know everybody does it, I do it. Sometimes I'm at work and somebody's like, I need to print something, I can't remember my password, and I'm just like, you know what? My username, my password is XYZ, just go in and print it out. Whatever. Right? And it's a bad thing that we do, but really actually you must never share your password. Not even with a computer administrator. So nobody, yes, I know that this person can reset your password and get into your account, but don't share your password, not even with a computer administrator. You know why? Because people like to use the same password over and over. And again, I have like 3 passwords basically that I just use for all sites. And why? Because it's hard to remember all of these passwords. Right? So, essentially you should have a different password for each site. But then when people do that, they end up doing like my password 1 number sign, my password 2 number sign, my password 3 number sign. And it's basically the same password. When there's weak or not. Well, not like
they have authenticators where run all your passwords through one main service.
Like the keyloggers kind of thing.
Yeah, so that will.
Right. But then if not, because if they get access to your authenticator, then basically they have access to everything that you want, right? You must write down your password. I know, I see enough people, the password, just reset your password to this and they write it down. No, you must memorize your password. And I'll show you something that you can do to actually get yourself more secure, but writing on the passwords is bad. It's just what I said, don't reuse them among different sites. Because this is the reason why a lot of people get trapped with the phishing scams. What they do is that they say, okay, they might send you a letter in the email, and that letter will like you to log into Facebook. But it's not really Facebook, it's a site that's stealing your password. And when that site steals your password, what it does is that you will put in a password that you might have the same email password as your Facebook password. Right? And when you now have the same email and Facebook password, you go back into your email and they look for your banking information email. Right? And then they go into that banking information email and get your bank password information, your bank login information. And if they use the same password for your bank login as well, then you have access to your money. Right? It's not in the back here like I'm going to try that. Yeah.
Yeah, and nowadays, if you're using Facebook and you get Instagram, you just log in, connect them together and use one password to do that.
Sorry?
You use one password to move Instagram and Facebook, even though they're different passwords.
Because Instagram uses Facebook as an access to this. That's like how you, yeah, like how we Google Plus, you use it for everything Google. Alright, well, that is for convenience. But the reality is, yes, if somebody gets into your Facebook password, then that means that they have access to Instagram and whatever other services that you can log in through Facebook. So, I know, this is talking about security is always depressing because it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so vulnerable. But comfort yourself with the fact that barely anybody might want to see the information. Yeah, that too. No matter what, if they want it, they'll get it. Right? So, you have to, and nobody does this as well, you have to change your password often. Right. Through practice. Right? But again, it's with me, what happens with some sites is that because I have, as I say, I'm a true for different passwords, I will end up, and this is why I don't change my passwords too often enough. I'll end up putting the old password for some other site. So it takes about 4 or 5 tries before I get. But then yeah, well, you're right to know that you forget it. Because I've met people like that. Like, where's the password? I've written down somewhere. Huh? Yeah, never write it down. You lose it. Somebody else can stumble on us and do that. Right? You have to select wise. You have to get a password that is easy to remember. But your password also has to be hard for somebody else to guess. Honestly, your password should not be any word in the dictionary. Yeah. Nothing personal to you. Alright? Your password should be, before they used to say at least 6 characters, but now it's really about no less than 8 characters. Alright? Okay. Huh? The more characters you have, is the harder, the more possible combination. Like if I have 1 character, right, from the alphabet, let's say lowercase alphabet, right, I have 26 different chances to choose from. If I have 2 characters from the internet, so this is A to Z. This is A to Z and A to Z. Right? So this is 2 characters. Essentially, you have, I think it's 26 squared, different combinations. So the more characters you have would be like 26 to the power of 8, which is a really huge number for a character. And if you put in numerals inside of there, or if you put in symbols, numerals or symbols inside of there, it gets even larger. So that's why they encourage you not just to have a dictionary with it. Right? So you should have hats, uppercase and lowercase letters. You should have numbers, you should have symbols inside of your password. So here's a little comic explaining it in terms of security. Right? And what he's saying here basically is that computer systems kind of ask us to create a password like this, which is kind of hard to remember, right? Essentially, entropy is randomness and confusion, right? So essentially, if I write a computer program, because this password does, and this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 characters in it containing caps, substitution with numbers and letters, and also numerals, right? For a password like this, however, you only have 28 bits of entropy. What this means essentially is that there's 2 to the power of 28 different combinations that we could use. But if I have a program that, and this is very possible, makes 1,000 guesses per second, 1,000 guesses at the password per second, is going to take 3 days to crack this password. Now look at this password. I swear that nobody will crack this password, right? It's hard. I could probably change this line and ask you, what's this password? 2 slides from none of you will be able to tell me. Alright, we will see. Soak it in. Okay, no right, no. Right? And you can't remember what this password is saying, what the password trouble, no, and one of the zeros was a symbol, and there was some other symbol. And so this is hard to remember. But then, if you take 4 random words from the dictionary, look how long this is done. It's just pure words. Correct, horse, battery, stable. Right? 4 random common words. This gives you approximately 44 bits of entropy, which is higher than the 28 bits that this password allows. Right? In 2 to the power 44 is 550 years to the thing to guess at 1,000 guesses per second. Right? And so this is much harder for a computer to guess. This is easy. If I write a computer program that's trying to crack this password, it'll eventually, within 3 years, it'll crack this. It'll take up to 550 years to crack this second one. And this one doesn't even have one of these symbols, So this is why longer passwords are better. Right? And look how easy it is to remember. Somebody, all he has to do is remember what's saying that's a battery stable and say correct. Right? Correct was battery stable. That's a lot easier to remember than this, not so? So, most places force us to put the punctuation or symbol inside of it. Most places force us to put the numbers inside of it. But if you have a long regular word password and you put the numbers and symbols inside of it, that's even harder for a computer to guess. Right? So that's why they say at least 8. Okay? But the point he's making here is that really actually you may not be forced people to create passwords. It makes it easy for computers to guess and hard for humans to guess. It should be the other way around. Right? So if you come up with something, your password like that. Yeah, 4 random words that you remember, then put a punctuation mark in between and put a number in between. And that would make it so much easier with that. Alright? So we have biometrics. Biometrics is your fingerprint, because your voice print, your iris scan, your retina scan, right? And these are cool. Because, you know, everybody on phones have the fingerprint scanners now. You know, we have systems, we see it in movies all the time, the iris or retina scan, right? But what is the danger of biometric identification? This is the danger of biometric identification. It reads Malaysia party steal finger. So somebody wants to get into your system, need your finger, what do they do? Huh? Or you can take your finger. Either way, I don't wanna, you know, I don't wanna go through all the hardship of finding your fingerprints and all of that. So really and truly, that's the danger of biometrics. You saw it in the Avengers movie too, not so? Where Loki had taken the guy eye or whatever. You saw the Avengers movie? But it depends on what it is. I mean, he used it within 10-15 minutes of taking it,
but in real,
you know what? But this is practical, right?
Yeah,
also, I think it's there's even ones also.
Sure, I think I'm my brain for 10 seconds before you scan it out. Well, but still, that's impractical. This is the most practical one out of all the scenarios we talk about here. Right? Another danger of biometrics is once a biometric password gets leaked, if somebody has your fingerprints, you can't change them. Right? You can't change your fingerprints. Huh? Right. The American government is scanning all the fingers when they give you their passport. So if it is like you have a phone now and you want to get into that phone, you can just come up with the same pattern and feed it into your phone. Right? And essentially, you can refuse to give a password to the door in America, but you can't refuse biometric scanning in America. Right? You already have it. And again, they can make you do it. So, we have communication and security as well. And we have four concepts. We have four concepts that we must explore when we are dealing with security and communication. We have privacy, which deals with interception of information, right? Of course, this person is really giving this person the information. But this person, I got it, right? It's like talking in the office and the office man will just say it. Right? And it's like, it's no always in between. I was not talking to you, right? But, they intercept the information and now you're part of the conversation. When everybody gets quiet, it gets awkward. Right? They have authentication, which we looked at. Authentication is proving who you are. This person is spoofing. Spoofing is pretending to be somebody else. So, what this person is doing is that they expect something from this person, but they are actually pretending to be that person. Right? So, again, it's kind of like where they say in your phone, which is significant other. Right? One, if you don't keep your phone locked, you should keep it locked. Two, with your significant other, they say store that person's name under the name. You put a little heart next to it. Understand? You know some people they store the name like level with a little heart next to it and a smiley face or whatever. And so that when you're texting this or this person calling, that comes up and it's smile and you feel all the time. Alright? Don't do this. Why? Because if you lose your phone and if your wallet or something so it's with your phone, chances are this person is a little bit of information about you. The person who takes your phone can text and say, my pin not working. Remind me what it was again. And you see a message like that from the bottom. And you say, well, 0000 is a pin. And that's the last pin I know. Right? And boom, all of a sudden somebody else have access to your banking information. Right? So, store a SO number under that, right? Or store a friend that has that so that if you know if they have a message like that from you, they can say, no, why is this person not seeing the information? And they can probably try and contact you someone from here and let you know that you need to find the bank card, protect your information. Right? We also have integrity of information, right? Where we modify information. Now this bottom, what here, this bottom, that seems to be a reference. Right? If it is that I have a message for somebody else, if I have a message for somebody else, but I can't tell that person directly, so I tell a third party to tell that person. Huh? That person could modify the information before they pass it to the third party. Right? What that means is you ever get a message from somebody else, you ever play the telecommunication game where you give one person a message and then you see how that message changes at the end? Yes? That is this here. Every time that message goes forward, the integrity of the information is lost. And lastly, we have non-repudiation of data, where you have proof that I sent you this message. Right? Nice little example would be we are in a party. Right? And I tell let's see, Tara, say Tara, you have a party later, I'm going to bring the yes. I just want to know when say that. And then we reach the party later, and all we waiting for the yes, and Tara swinging them the hand. Now we're like, Tara, what happened? He's like, what happened at the party? I was like, yeah, but you have to bring the yes. And he's like, no one ever tell me I have to bring the yes. Even though I know I told you to bring the yes. Right? Yeah, you don't want to spend money, that's his problem. Right? I have no proof that I told him to bring the yes. So he can refute the information that I told him. And nobody could prove that I told him because it was me and him when I said it to him. Even though he said, yeah, I'll bring the yes. But if I had Terran's WhatsApp, and I sent Terran a WhatsApp saying, hey, bring the yes. And I see the two ticks, and then I see the tick turn blue. Right? And Terran probably go to this one like because you don't know that there's no way that I can say I didn't tell him to bring the yes. Right? All you have to do is type okay. Right? And this way we achieve non-repudiation of data. There is no way that he could say that he did not get the message. There's somebody else answer that. There's some criminals. Or you could just talk about it. Right? So, okay, then in my example, I have some schemish ways to get around that. But really and truly, there should be some method to achieve this. Right. So we're also going to talk about cryptography or secret writing. Right? Essentially, encrypting data converts plain text to ciphertext. And ciphertext is text that can't be read just like that. When we decrypt the text back into plain text, when the receiver gets it, that the message is intelligible to that person. But anybody who gets the message while it's in ciphertext is not going to be able to read it. Why? Because I encrypted my message with some sort of key, and you also have a key, and that key can be used to decrypt the message. You all understand? Alright, so basically this is what it is. Basic cipher, I'm sure everybody did this in primary school at some point when they pass it up as a student friend. You take a letter and you shift it like 2 or 3 letters to the side. Right? So when you type B, instead you type E. Essentially, this is the most basic form of cipher. Alright, where did you do this? Right. So again, another little comment. A cryptonaut imagination, he thinks somebody's going to say, somebody's laptop is encrypted. And how are we going to get into that person's laptop? Right? Let's build them in another computer to be able to crack it. Right? And he's like, no, it's super encryption. We'll never be able to get into this laptop. And the person says, oh, wow, well, our plan is no good because the encryption of this is so strong. What's going to happen in real life is that the people will say his laptop is encrypted, let's drug him and hit him with a wrench until he gives us the password to the laptop. Right? And that'll probably do because nobody wants to get a wrench. So, again, security, security is multiple levels of security. You can have the best computer security, and if you have no physical protection, then still will get into like public tools to get into the system. Also, you can't trust software if its source code is hidden. You know what source code is, yes? We spoke about source code. Yes? Remember, source code is the programming code that is created to actually turn into the software. Right? And we have 2 types of software. We have open source software, we have closed source software. Companies like Microsoft, Apple, they develop closed source software. Because their software is proprietary. Alright? What that means though is that there are people out there who would write essentially ways of getting into your system, into their software. Right? So this statement, this security is to be taken seriously. Only those operating systems should be used whose source code has been published and checked. So you could be using, and the truth is, in Windows 10, this is an issue. Right? Windows 10 has the capability at any time to take the information that you're doing on the computer and report it to Microsoft. It's in their EULA. It wasn't their EULA from which is a end user license agreement, since the testing of it. Right? Now they agreed to not do it unless necessary. But what do they deem necessary? Yeah. So essentially, if you can't see the code for the software, how do you know that software is making your messages? with a banking system, just buy a software solution for the online banking and not have somebody check the code for it. You know what happens in a situation like that? Yeah? Somebody needs some method of getting into everybody who uses that system account. Or somebody, you all know the method of salami slicing. You all ever heard that with respect to computer security? Yeah, that's where there was a computer programmer for a bank. And what the computer programmer for the bank did was that he programmed into the software every time somebody moves money, it takes about a quarter of a cent and it sends it to his account. Now, the bank does thousands of money movement transactions today. So, over time, you just have this little amount just building up in his account. But the amount is so small that nobody can trace it for a very, very long time. Right? So he essentially became a millionaire from collecting half a cent, quarter of a cent, tenth of a cent from a whole bunch of transactions. Because if I move $30 million, right, let's say I move $30,295,372. But $30,295,371 in your account. Anybody saying that a lot? Right? Or a cent on top of that. So essentially what he did was he just said, oh, it's so small over here. Right? And nobody did. No, eventually the found, and everything eventually gets found. Right? I mean, suspicious activity or account bring, thousands of accounts just depositing money into your account. Even though I suppose he would have regulated the system to clear the logs of where the money comes from and all that. So, it will take him some time, but he got found. So, they say here, secrecy and security are the same. Right? And only bad security relies on secrecy. Good security will work even if all the details of it are public. And this is very, very true for software. Well, you don't want anybody manipulating the software. But at the same time, how can I trust you to say that you are really doing what you are doing? Especially when there have been instances before where you haven't done that. Right? So, demand open source code, right, for anything related to security. And this is why a lot of the internet is built on open source software. Right? This is software where we can see the actual code and utilize the code. Change the code as necessary, analyze the code, things like that. Right. Phishing attacks. You mentioned phishing attacks earlier also. Right? So you have a message that comes from what seems like a bank. It's not your bank, but it seems like a bank, and you say, hey, we see that you have this amount of money in another country, which you don't know but you know it, so you might take it. Right? You go to this website and you put it and say, where is the current bank? And you put in the current bank information, and boom, they say it broke. Why? Because they're stealing money. I got one just the other day saying that I have some trust fund in Canada and they would like to talk to me about more money making out. Just press the link button. Right? So phishing is where they kind of try to get information out of you. Right? A good way to ensure that you are on the site that you are supposed to be on is that most encrypted sites have a little lock in your browser. Please read. So when you go to your bank site, if you don't see that green lock, it means that somebody might be able to steal information from your website. Right? Another good way to avoid phishing attacks is if you didn't solicit that information, then go after it. Right? No bank in the world is going to tell you, hey, we have money for you. That's really good. Alright? So in terms of integrity, we spoke about backups already, so make backups, right? I'm not going to go through backups in any detail in terms of the scheduling of it, right? But with backups, you want to back up your data off-site. It doesn't make sense your computer system is right here and all of the data that your backup is sitting on right next to it. Because in a fire, everything is going to get moved, right? Again, your backup scheme should be first times and sometimes you should do a full backup, but often you should do an incremental backup. I know you know what full and incremental backups are. Right? So you have a good retention scheme, example 7 daily, 4 weekly, 12 monthly, or yearly backups. Right? However you choose to do the backups. Reflect about the time for a full restore and test the ability to restore your data. Because at some point, one backup might fail and prevent you from going forward in terms of restoring your data. Right? You see up 80% of backups, up to 80% fail to restore. So, part of a network administrator job or data administrator's job is to make sure that the data that they are backing up is able to be backed up. Or else you're just going to end up with, a bunch of probably fields that you can access. Right? Alright, let's skip this. Right. In terms of the computer systems, scan for malware. Malware such as software that will take information from the computer and send it to third parties. Software that will destroy your files. Right? Software that will provide unwanted access to your files. Right? You can also only install software from trusted sources. They say here, avoid if possible peer-to-peer or web downloads. Right? If you know what you're doing, cool. If you don't know what you're doing, or somebody asks them, you think this is a trusted source? Right? Where are we getting our data from? That's a big security consideration. Right? You want to apply your software updates and upgrades. More often than not, your updates and upgrades protect your system. Yes, there are the instances where an upgrade is going to cause your system some trouble, but software updates, most times they protect your system. Right? Save new versions of documents. I know some people like to overwrite their documents. Right? Save every time you make a change rather than, why are you trying to save computer space? Right? Rather than just rewriting the file, unless you have absolutely sure, save it as a new file. That way, if one of your files get corrupted, at least you can go to the one before that and you have those changes to do. Alright? We mentioned the disaster recovery plan. We have some preventative measures, detective measures, and corrective measures. Right? You must prepare for a disaster. Don't let the problem happen and then try and fix it. The data is probably going to get lost. Alright. So, on this site, on the SDCS Moodle, right, I have a quick security quiz for us to do, and let's see how we do at that. You can click on it, right? It should take just about 5 minutes, and after that, we'll take a look at 1 or 2 security questions that we will that from past papers that we will look at. Everybody see the link to the security quiz? When you go inside, just click on start. The quiz, that's all you get. It's a real basic security quiz. I said that I needed to the fellow. I'm really supposed to report. Done?
Yeah, finished.
What did you Alright. Which one's the little problem? I know, I didn't say, I know for the email one, I didn't say I deleted the message, but yes, you're supposed to report it so that they would block the.
Just scroll down there. Yes. Answer the next page.
You know what you do? Yeah, you're not to update it first before you go. Well, yeah, I would install the adverts and provide the food one. The logic behind it is essentially it's been sitting out there, so it's not been made updated. So, alright. And so let's just take a look at some of the past paper questions. We have so you can open the past paper question 5. We're not taking a look at the first 3 questions because I want to go into more detail about that next week. So we're doing the 1 mark question 12. Alright, and then at question 7. Question 13. So we're just going to take 10 minutes, take a look at these questions, and go through them, and that will be it for us today. Alright, so you're going to pass paper. Alright? Question 12, 7, and 13. Under security. Is there any news for excuse me. we have to move until probably the end of May. Huh? Huh? We'll see. No, we'll probably use all the Saturdays in May. Well, let's see how it goes. You want when are the morning class finishing? Well, if I don't want, we can just do a long class on the 21st. Alright, so 28 to 10 Alright, well, George, we'll talk about it after. We have time to talk about it. Or we could have it, from 10 to 12 and then just do like another hour after for that 3 hours. When is the class after? Alright, and then for the first one is yeah. afternoon in 2 minutes, right? So let me take a look at these questions. Explain the term hacking and identify the risk that it might pose to a business. Anybody? Right.
This may hold the risk of business by subtracting the system and getting all information entered in the system or system.
Right, yes. So, risk could be that it might make the information vulnerable, when hacking might allow for somebody to circumvent the security system that has been put into place. Right? It might also lead to the loss of data, etc. Yes? Huh? Oh. something near and dear to many of our hearts, software piracy. What is that? Anybody? Simply put, it is
when a piece of paid software is cracked or uploaded or whatever. So
I guess
any
we do.
person can upload and use it without paying.
right. Will you know?
The unauthorized software for the web and through current sites.
Right, yes. So software piracy is essentially stealing of software. Right? Using software without necessary authorized use. Typically you get it from you get the software or a crack from elsewhere on the internet, which will allow you, when I say elsewhere, I mean not from the software creator, which allows you to utilize the software without paying for it in most cases. Virus. Anybody? Not Richard. Virus. Pick somebody. Not taken. Okay. Ryan. What's the name of the guy? Is Ryan? What is his name? Kimo. So you know Ryan?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm confused. Kimo. Alright, what is a virus? If you find it earlier, this one is one of the easiest ones. Or you might not have come in here. Give it a shot. Yeah, you're correct so far. Well, yeah, essentially it's a software program that causes a computer to operate in a manner that it should not. Right? So think about it just like what the virus does to your body when you get a virus in your body, right? Your chest starts to build because you have extra mucus in your chest. You start to cough, you get fevers. Your body shouldn't operate like that. For a computer virus is the same thing. It's a program that might cause the files not to save properly. It might cause the computer to shut down randomly, right? It might cause the computer to send information to somebody that it shouldn't. So once it causes it to not do what it's supposed to do, it is a virus. We have 3 precautions that might be taken in order to minimize the likelihood of an unauthorized person gaining access to the data stored in a computer system. Let's take it out. Let's see how you do that. Right, so you have a firewall to protect it from an unauthorized connection. Anything else? You have a password in the system to prevent them from walking up to the computer and logging in. Yes, I have one. Right, well, you don't share the password that you have. Anything else? Lock your doors. Right, so that nobody can just simply walk in and use the computer system. If they can't get it physically, you have to try and get it some other way. Right? Or have a security guard. Right, so that you can, have, some sort of restriction in terms of access. And the last question that we look at, what is meant by the term biometrics? Is it Christy? Christy? What's biometrics? Alright. Alright, Danielle. Biometrics. We just talked about it.
I know. Biometrics is like,
Right, so how will we define biometrics? Which is your? Right, your body. Right, yeah. So when you use your body as features from your body as a means of ensuring security, such as your fingerprints, or retina scan, or iris scan, or even the voice in some instances. Huh? Well, maybe sometime in the future that might be you are looking at it. Right? So we have 4 different examples of biometric technology. I just explained them. I have fingerprint scanners, we have retina scanners, we have face scanner, voice recognition. Right? And what are some of the benefits of using biometric technology? Benefits, huh? It could be more secure than a password. I would change that to it could be more secure than just using a password. Right? What?
Because it's not easy.
Correct. Right? It's very, very difficult to duplicate somebody's biometrics. Huh? Let me see. Oh, well, yeah, it's constant and it's reliable, I would say. Right? Probably rather than having a security guard who might be this. And then lastly, we have data encryption. How can data encryption be used to protect data, which has been input or stored into our computer system? What is encryption again? Jessica looked like she went to answer that question. Right, so encryption is where you make your data unintelligible, right, until it is decrypted by the key. How can that be used to protect data? Anybody? Last question?
Without being you will not be able to translate data and it will be able to access it.
Right, so anybody without the key, which will probably be somebody who's not protected before, will not be able to understand that data. Right? It also protects data when of course that data has to be transferred across a network so that if anybody who's monitoring the network in terms of the data passing across it, they can't utilize the data. Alright guys, so that's it for us today. Any questions? Alright, next week we will be on security as well. Everybody sign to register. Yes? Okay, you want me to leave? Well, before if I have a makeup during the week, very, very difficult. No days is good for anybody. Alright, but then we will have to just do the Saturday thing. Alright? When some of your other classes are finished, just take some time.